Everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome. So today we have an art journal tutorial and I'm going to talk about how to get more from one stencil. So I'm working on my Canson Mixed Media 7x10 art journal page. There's some leftover gesso that I rubbed through a stencil on the page, but you don't really see that. What I have in front is this Cactus Dahlia stencil from the Crafters Workshop. Now, every time I've looked at this, I've said this stencil is a floral. It is a focal image stencil, and I'm going to use it that way, but I'm going to show you other ways to use your stencils. So I taped it down where I want it, and I'm colorizing the background of the stencil. I'm mixing turquoise, gray blue, and white gesso right on the makeup sponge, right on the page, which is gessoed, by the way. 90% of the time I do gesso my pages. I find that it just works better for me. I want an interesting background, which is why I'm mixing the paints right with the makeup sponge. It's a quick, easy way. It dries really quick. And if you haven't given that a try, give it a try. Here I'm just rubbing over. I'm still thinking that maybe that texture is going to come into play. So now I want to colorize the Dahlia. And I've chosen Naples yellow, orange, and deep violet. I'm just moving the tape out to the edge just to tape the stencil down. And I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a ombre effect. I'm going to start with yellow in the middle and then some orange. I want to try to prevent hard edges where I'm changing from one color to the next. And this, believe it or not, is the deep violet, but I've mixed it with the orange off to the side, and it makes this rose color that I absolutely adore. So the moment of truth. So I lift it up. Now, right now, I'm liking the white border around the outside edge, but at the time I was like, oh, it's too wide. It wasn't what was matching the picture in my head. So I grabbed a paintbrush and the colors that I did in the background, the blue, the turquoise, and the gesso, and I'm just painting off that thicker white border. Now, had I left that, the page would have had a lighter, airier field, and some of the steps that I did do wouldn't have happened. And this is a case of every time you do make a decision on your art journal page, it's like a domino. The next thing happens because that happened. It sets something in motion. So I'm really happy with the colors of this Dahlia. But in my mind, I was going to do black in the middle, and I hesitated a little bit. So I grabbed my Fineline Applicator Bottle, and I start to fill in the where the white lines are. Now, these stencils by Valentina Designs, there's a lot of doodling on them, and they lean to doing more doodling on the page. And while many days I'm quite happy to go with my Fineline Applicator Bottle, I was just not very patient. My hands were a little shaky today, so I grabbed my Posca pen, black, and I'm doing the doodling with it. Two options. And, it wasn't working, so I just switched midstream. And in the final product, you really can't tell which is which. Now I'm not trying to get rid of all the white. I want the white to be there. It kind of acts as highlights. And there we have it. So I have this dahlia in the middle of my page, and what am I going to do now? Well, I needed to add more interest to the background. So I was looking for stencils that I could put pattern on the background, and I said, I'm going to use the same stencil. In the middle, there's this 5-leaf flower. So I'm just going to do some stenciling with that. First with the white that you see me using right now. So I've used this stencil as the focal image, and now I'm using it to add pattern and interest to the background as a background stencil. Now I would totally use that motif in the center on a different background that really didn't have the focal image here. And here I'm using yet another part of the stencil to get a different motif. So instead of grabbing out 3 stencils, I've just used the same one 3 times. So now that the white's dry, I'm grabbed some Prussian blue, and I'm going to do the same with that 5-petal motif in the middle, and then the dot one that's right in the middle. And when I added this dark and these layers of the same basic patterns, this page just seemed to come alive to me. So go and look at your stencils and look for ways that you can use it in more than one way, whether it's on the same page or not. A focal image stencil isn't just a focal image stencil. Continuing to add more interest to the background, I grabbed the Stamperia Words stamp, and I'm putting black acrylic paint on it and stamping. Here I'm just using that music sheet. It was handy to use as a mask, so I didn't get any of that stamp on the focal image. I didn't want to have that on there. And then I'm taking time, as I always do, to spray it with my Murphy's oil soap and get that acrylic paint off of my stamps. So I've had this butterfly napkin, and it has so many butterflies on it. It's so well worth it. And I remembered it had the same colors. So I'm grabbing a few of these out. I'm just quickly water cutting them to get them out of from the napkin, the whole of the napkin. And then I start to water cut, and I decide, you know what? I'm just not feeling too energetic today. So I'm just going to glue these down onto copy paper with my matte medium. And then I'm going to fussy cut them and glue them onto my page. And since I'm going through the process of gluing everything down, I do more than what I'm going to use. And that means they're just in the stash, my container that I can reach and use at any time. So now that I have that cut out, I go through my sentiments, and in the Embrace Possibility sentiment, I found this one that says, make space in your life for possibility to unfold. And I like the idea because the flowers unfolded and the butterfly wings are unfolding, but I shrunk it down to 50%. Now I spend a lot of time playing with these butterflies and the sentiment, figuring out where do I want them to go. Then I think, I'm going to add some butterfly stamping in the background. This is a Stampin' Up set that I've been using a lot lately, and it just happens to be on my desk. I mix up the deep violet and the orange, and I'm stamping with acrylic paint this butterfly in the background. This does two things: gives some more interest and pattern to the background, ties into the butterfly, and three things, and brings the color from the dahlia to the outside page. Speaking of which, I also splattered with the Naples yellow. So I decided to cut up the sentiment and kind of have it step down so your eyes flow that way. And I'm gluing it down with my fluid matte medium. So I'm cleaning the matte medium off my brush before I go put it in water. Now I'm doing the finishing touches. And I'm going to shade using the floating acrylic technique with black acrylic paint around this dahlia and then on top of the dahlia. This is going to add some shadows. It's just going to make my focal image stand out all the more. And here I'm just adding some shading to the petals of the flower. The white that I've left there acts as the highlights. So I don't need to add highlights. Then I want to shade around this butterfly. Now they say you should have 3 focal images or groups of 3 that is more pleasing to the eye. And I tried to put 3 butterflies. There simply wasn't enough room on the page. But I do have 3. I have the bigger dahlia, the butterfly, and the sentiment. So there's 3. Now I'm shading around the outside edge. And I grab my Posca pen again and outline the sentiment. So this video tutorial is almost at an end. So go look at your stencils. Take one stencil and use it on one page in different ways. Maximize the use. Leave me a comment, ask me a question, and as always, go get creative.